Imagine signing your own death warrant simply by paying your employees too much.
Yeah, it sounds completely ridiculous.
Right. It sounds entirely absurd to us today. But in first century Judea, radical generosity wasn't just frowned upon by the local chamber of commerce. It was actually viewed as an act of profound economic treason.
Oh, absolutely.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We're taking a comprehensive prep document dissecting Matthew chapter 20, and our mission today is simple. We are going to throw a rock right through the metaphorical stained glass window that usually surrounds this text.
I love that. Shatter the pristine image.
Exactly. We want to uncover the gritty historical context, the really intense political tension, and the raw interpersonal drama happening just beneath the surface. Because, once you see the mechanics of this world, you really cannot unsee them.
That is the perfect framing. We so often lose the absolute friction of this narrative. Like, this isn't just a peaceful collection of timeless moral teachings delivered in some sort of vacuum.
Yeah, like a polite seminar.
No, not at all. It is a high-stakes, literal life or death narrative, and it's unfolding in a society that is just buckling under the weight of its own systemic pressures.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's transport ourselves to first century Judea and Galilee. For you listening, picture a purely agrarian society, and the people living there are facing the crushing reality of Roman occupation.
Yeah, and we need to be clear about what that means.
Right, because we aren't just talking about soldiers walking the streets in armor. We are talking about a highly efficient, deeply extractive taxation machine.
It was relentless.
It was. The economic reality for the average person wasn't just bleak. It was a daily tightrope walk over absolute ruin.
Yeah, and to understand the opening of Matthew 20, the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, you really have to grasp the socioeconomic threat that day laborers represented.
Because they weren't just, like, normal employees.
Exactly. These weren't union contractors waiting for an assignment. These were the precariat, the absolute bottom of the socioeconomic barrel.
Like people who had literally lost everything.
Yep. Yes. They had lost their ancestral land, likely due to debt or those very Roman taxes we just mentioned. And now they gathered in the marketplaces every single day, facing constant vulnerability.
They had zero safety net.
None. Their survival, and whether their children ate that night, relied entirely on the whims of an elite, wealthy landowner choosing to hire them for a single denarius, which was a day's wage.
So in this parable, Jesus describes a landowner who hires groups of these desperate workers at different times throughout the day. Like, some start at the crack of dawn, some mid-morning, and some aren't hired until the 11th hour.
The very end of the day.
Right, the end of the day. And then comes the payout. And this is where the scandal hits the contemporary audience. To put this in a way you would feel in your bones today, imagine you show up to a grueling construction job.
Oh, this is a great way to look at it.
You're hauling bricks, you're pouring concrete in the blazing sun for 12 hours straight. Your back is breaking.
Yeah.
Then some guy walks onto the site at 4:45 p.m.
Just casually strolls in.
Exactly. He sweeps up some sawdust for 15 minutes. And when the foreman hands out the pay envelopes, that latecomer gets the exact same day rate as you.
You would be absolutely furious.
You would want to burn the site down. It violates our deepest human instinct for, proportional fairness.
It completely does. And what's fascinating here is how intentionally this landowner's radical generosity subverts the entire cultural operating system of the time.
Because they didn't have a capitalist free market.
No, first century society did not run on a free market economy at all. It ran on the Greco-Roman patronage system.
And that system was incredibly rigid, wasn't it? It wasn't just about who had the most money in the bank.
Not at all. Think of the patronage system like a mafia favor network combined with an inescapable social credit score.
Wow. A mafia favor network.
Yeah, it was built on strict hierarchies and really intense gatekeeping. A wealthy patron would grant a favor like a job or maybe legal protection to a client, but that favor wasn't a gift.
It was debt.
Exactly. It was a debt. The client now owed the patron infinite loyalty, public praise, and political support. You only ever received what your social standing dictated or, what you could earn through unwavering loyalty.
So the wealthy just use this to stay on top.
Right. Powerful people use their resources to lord their status over their subjects and keep everyone clearly in their designated place on the social ladder.
So by paying the latecomers the exact same wage as the people who work all day, the landowner isn't just being universally kind. He is deliberately refusing to create a hierarchy of debt.
He is dismantling the ledger entirely.
Oh,
Because think about it. The people who work 12 hours want to look down on the people who worked 1 hour. They want the hierarchy. They want to know they're better, more valuable, and higher up the chain.
want that status.
Exactly. But the landowner levels the playing field, which just destroys the foundation of an economy built on status and superiority. And this brings us to a critical key verse in your document, Matthew 20.13.
Right, so the last will be first, and the first will be last.
Yes. This is the core thesis of this new upside-down kingdom economy Jesus is introducing. It operates on a scandalous, disruptive grace that completely ignores human merit.
But, and this is a big but, when you casually dismantle a society's foundational economic hierarchy, the political establishment instantly takes notice.
Oh yeah, you don't get away with that.
No, the target on Jesus' back just gets exponentially larger, which perfectly explains why the text shifts right here. As they get closer to Jerusalem, Jesus pulls his inner circle aside to prepare them for the inevitable blowback.
Things are getting real.
Very real. He issues his third and honestly most detailed prediction of his impending suffering and death. But wait, I need to jump in here and admit some confusion.
Sure, what is it?
Well, we know from other historical accounts in the sources, like the stoning of Stephen in the book of Acts, that religious leaders occasionally carried out mob executions.
Right, unofficial stonings.
Yeah. So if the Sanhedrin hated Jesus so much and viewed him as this existential threat, why not just incite a mob to stone him? Why does Jesus explicitly predict he will be handed over to the Gentiles, meaning the Romans, for crucifixion?
That's a really good question.
I mean, why go through the bureaucratic hassle of bringing Pontius Pilate into it?
That is the pivotal political reality of this specific moment in history. The Jewish religious leaders, primarily the Sanhedrin, are desperate.
Desperate to hold on to power.
Yes. They are trying to maintain their fragile authority over the temple, but more importantly, they're desperately trying to maintain the Pax Romana, the delicate Roman peace.
Because if they don't, the Romans will step in and crush them.
Exactly. They viewed Jesus as a dangerous disruptor who could bring the brutal wrath of the Roman military down on all of them. But under Roman occupation, the Sanhedrin lacked the official legal authority to execute anyone for capital crimes.
So an unofficial mob stoning just wouldn't solve their problem.
No, a mob stoning is messy. It's illegal under Roman law, and it risks turning Jesus into a localized martyr, which could, incite the very riots the Sanhedrin is trying to prevent.
Right, it could backfire completely.
Exactly. To permanently and officially eliminate this threat, they needed the Roman prefect, Pontius Pilate, to condemn him. And Jesus predicting his own crucifixion is a massive historical detail.
Because it wasn't just a standard execution.
No. Crucifixion wasn't just a generic death penalty. It was a highly specific, unimaginably brutal tool of psychological warfare. The Romans used it almost exclusively for sedition, for rebels, and for enemies of the state.
It was essentially a billboard of state terror.
Precisely. They would place the crosses along major roadways at eye level, so you had to literally look the victim in the eye as you walked by.
Wow, that is terrifying.
It was meant to be. The message was clear. Do not challenge Rome. So for Jesus to say he'll be handed to the Romans to be crucified means he knows he's going to be executed not as a rogue rabbi, but as an enemy of the Roman Empire.
Which puts him in this incredibly precarious, almost paradoxical position.
Yeah.
Because, on one hand, the religious establishment views him as this dangerous rebel who is going to provoke a Roman slaughter.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have the actual rebels, the Jewish zealots, factions like the followers of Judas of Galilee. They are itching for a violent, bloody revolt against Rome.
We want a war.
Exactly. They want a militant commander.
And Jesus's strictly nonviolent mission deeply contrasted with those militant expectations. He is simultaneously disappointing the zealots by refusing to take up the sword, while terrifying the religious establishment by dismantling the social order.
He's making everyone angry.
Yeah. He is caught in the exact center of this political crossfire, alienating the power brokers on every single side.
And, knowing all of that context makes the very next moment in the text arguably the most jarring. It is an incredible psychological whiplash.
It really is.
Just imagine this scene for a second. Jesus has just intimately confessed to his closest friends that he is marching directly toward a horrific Roman crucifixion. It is a profound, heavy revelation of divine sacrifice.
The air should be completely sucked out of the room.
Right, you'd hear a pin drop, and literally in the next breath, his inner circle engages in a petty, cutthroat political power play.
The timing is just stunning.
It's awful.
It is. The mother of two of his disciples, James and John, approaches Jesus and makes this incredibly brazen request. She asks that her sons get to sit at Jesus' right and left hands in his kingdom.
She is basically asking for them to be co-presidents.
Yeah, she is literally staging a political play for the highest cabinet seats in the new administration, mere seconds after he told them he was going to be tortured and killed.
And when the other 10 disciples hear about this backroom deal, they're completely outraged. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I think because we are reading a religious text, we have this tendency to view the disciples as these constantly pious, holy men.
Flawless saints.
Exactly. We assume the 10 are mad because they are righteously indignant at the lack of empathy from James and John. We assume they are saying, how could you ask for power when our teacher just said he is going to die?
But that's not what's happening.
No. If we look at the raw human drama, they aren't righteously angry at all. They are just mad because they wanted those seats. They are furious. They got beat to the punch by a mom stepping in to negotiate.
It is a tragically comic portrait of human ambition. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains exactly why they're acting this way, despite everything Jesus just said.
Because they're not listening to the dying part.
Right. The disciples are entirely operating on Jewish apocalyptic hopes. In their minds, this kingdom Jesus keeps talking about is a literal earthly Davidic throne.
They're expecting a military coup.
Yes. They expect him to roll into Jerusalem, invoke divine power to overthrow the Roman legions, and set up a new geopolitical government.
And they want to be the ones in charge.
Exactly. In that new government, they expect the Messiah to grant exclusive, elevated privileges to his most loyal Jewish followers, placing them in positions of absolute dominance over the Gentiles.
So they are fighting over corner offices in a building that Jesus is actively telling them is about to be burned to the ground.
That is the perfect way to say it. They are completely missing the mechanism of what he is doing.
So how does Jesus resolve this massive clash, between their earthly ambition and his impending divine sacrifice?
He brings them together and radically redefines the very mechanics of greatness. In Matthew 20:26 through 28, he says, "It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant."
Wow.
Yeah. He completely flips the Greco-Roman hierarchy we talked about earlier. He tells them that the ultimate inversion of worldly power is that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
So power isn't about rising to the top.
No, he is telling them that true power in this new kingdom mirrors his own destiny. It is about descending into servanthood, voluntarily giving up your status, not ascending to a throne to dominate others.
But this tension, this clash between the human desire for worldly power and the reality of this upside-down kingdom, it doesn't just stay neatly contained within the inner circle.
It definitely doesn't.
No. As they continue their journey toward Jerusalem, this drama spills right out onto the dusty streets near Jericho.
Right, the scene with the blind men.
Yeah. They are walking along, and there are 2 blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they hear Jesus is passing by, they start loudly crying out to him. But it isn't the volume of their voices that causes a massive panic in the crowd.
It's what they say.
Exactly. It's the specific title they use. They declare him the Son of David, and the crowd immediately turns on them and desperately tries to silence them.
And we have to look at the severe political stakes of that specific moment. Calling Jesus the Son of David wasn't just a nice religious honorific or a theological compliment.
It was incredibly dangerous.
It was deadly. In a heavily occupied territory, under the watchful eye of the Roman military, declaring someone the true physical heir to the throne of King David was essentially an illegal, treasonous shout.
It's a declaration of a new king.
Yes, it was a direct vocal threat to Caesar's absolute authority.
So the crowd isn't shushing them because they're disrupting a quiet procession.
Oh, no. The crowd is terrified for their own lives. You have to remember the timing here. They are journeying toward Jerusalem for Passover.
And Passover is huge.
Right. It's a festival that specifically celebrates Jewish liberation from foreign slavery in Egypt. The Romans knew this was the most dangerous time of the year for uprisings.
Because everyone's already thinking about freedom.
Exactly. So the Romans would flood Jerusalem and the surrounding roads with extra legions of soldiers to maintain order through sheer intimidation. A crowd allowing 2 men to publicly declare a new king is a crowd that is about to experience the brutal edge of a Roman broadsword.
They're trying to silence the blind men out of sheer self-preservation.
Yes. Any whisper of a son of David is, a A spark in a forest coated in gasoline.
Man. So what does this all mean? Like, what does it mean for you listening to this today? I think when we strip away that pristine stained glass window and look at the raw, unpolished history, it really forces us to hold up a mirror.
It does. It's uncomfortable.
Very. Look at the laborers demanding what's fair and clinging to their superiority instead of celebrating grace. Look at the disciples using a spiritual movement as a vehicle for their own upward mobility and, cabinet seats.
It's so relatable, honestly.
Right. Human ambition hasn't really changed in 2,000 years. We still naturally default to viewing power as a tool for dominating others, for securing our own status, rather than a tool for serving those at the bottom of the ladder.
That's spot on.
The message Jesus delivers here, that the last will be first, that true greatness requires giving up your life as a ransom. It is just as economically and politically disruptive today as it was on the dusty road to Jerusalem.
This raises an important question, something we haven't explicitly named yet, but it's woven deeply through the mechanics of this entire chapter.
Oh, what's that?
Well, consider the profound irony of who sees what in this narrative. The inner circle of disciples, these men who physically had their eyes wide open, who witnessed the miracles firsthand, who heard the teachings directly from him, were completely blind to the true nature of Jesus' sacrificial kingdom.
Wow, yeah, they were totally focused on their own status.
Exactly. They were totally lost in the dark of their own political ambition. Yet, the two literal blind men sitting in the dirt on the side of the road were the only ones who could clearly see exactly who he was.
To the point of risking everything.
Yes, risking their own lives to shout it out loud in front of a terrified crowd. It really makes you wonder, what are we utterly blind to in our own relentless pursuit of success?
That is a question that definitely sticks with you. And before we go, we really need to hear from you.
Yes, absolutely.
Head down to the comments and drop your thoughts on the raw historical drama we explored today. Like, which character's ambition or subversion surprised you the most?
I'm really curious to see what people say.
Me too. Was it the demanding laborers, the power-hungry disciples, or that terrified crowd in Jericho? Let's get a discussion going down there. And if you enjoyed today's deep dive, please do us a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss out.
It helps us out a lot.
It really does. Also, remember to check the description box below for some exclusive links related to the show. We are just scratching the surface of these ancient texts, and I promise you our next deep dive is going to be even more intense.
You definitely won't want to miss it.
Until next time, keep digging.